Hi, I'm Jodie Hemerda. Welcome to a session on engaged discussion forums for TLC. Today I am excited to be presenting alongside Jana, an instructional designer for Bridgepoint Education, and Nancy Garza, an instructor with Ashford University and a doctoral student at University of Rockies. A little bit about me. I'd like to introduce you to my work and my personal family. As you can see, I absolutely just adore my 3 children, and I absolutely adore the leaders that I get to work with. In addition to my husband, he's pretty good too. In 2005, I had the opportunity to be part of a hybrid program where we were beta testing adding online platform into a traditional classroom. So students would be released from the classroom time for a couple of hours and got to do some online work. I got really interested in what was happening in these discussion forums in the online platform, and how could we get them to be as engaging as what happened in the physical space when we were all in a room together. Life has just afforded me opportunities to be able to expand my knowledge and be able to practice what I've been learning. Along the way, I became obsessed with online pedagogy as well as adult learning best practices. Then I had some opportunities to play with educational technology. And then in 2013, I wrote my dissertation on the use of instructional feedback to improve student outcomes. It's been a fascinating ride, and I'm excited to share some of what I've learned with you here today.
Hi, my name is Jana. I'm an instructional designer for Bridgepoint Education. I live in Longmont, Colorado, north of Denver. I support faculty in course development at Ashford University. I'm fascinated with engaged student learning and love to write worldly and provocative discussions that get students out of their comfort zone and into a higher level of learning. I believe education is powerful and can change students' lives. My professional experience includes 6 years as an instructional designer and education technologist in higher education. This photo is my husband Gary and I at the top of a pyramid in Ekbalam, a few hours from Cancun, Mexico. We're at the top of a Mayan temple in this picture. I'm happy to be here today to offer insights into creating engaging discussions.
Hi everyone, my name is Nancy and I would like to share with you my intro slide. Here is my adorable cat, and yes, his name is Clay Matthews, and he loves to sleep hard, and he also likes to play hard like his NFL's namesake. And over here on the right is my current bowling team, and we're just acting a little silly after we took first place at the last bowling session. So for this current session, we are keeping our fingers crossed we can hang on to that top spot. Now, as far as my own educational journey, I'm currently in school for my PhD in education. And also, one moment that stood out to me during my own journey was for my master's ceremony. October 2015, the Ashford commencement speaker was Damon Lopez. And he stated, quote, "Almost every successful person begins with 2 beliefs. The future can be better than the present, and I have the power to make it so," end quote. That statement right there has just really stuck with me, and that plays into my mindset for how I run my classes. And I really encourage and challenge my students to dig deep and to be proactive and intentional with their learning, because I believe in them and I believe they can make a difference. And I want them to see that and for them to realize they can make that difference.
To get started, I'd like to show you a role play that some instructional designers did of their interpretation of what often happens in an online discussion forum.
Discussion forum in action. This week you will be asked to respond with 350 words using 2 scholarly sources. Please respond by Thursday at midnight. Go.
All right, here we go. Copy, let's see. Get it out of the LMS, put it into Word. Now I can type everything and type everything and type everything. Well, I gotta pass 350 words, but at least everything's in here. Copy, paste, Done. All right, what's for dinner now?
I don't know. I've looked. I can't find two scholarly articles that answer the question. I hate this. But I think I'll just find a couple of websites and put those on. Okay. All right. Here are two very interesting websites I found to answer the question. Submit.
Oh shoot, Friday, late post, type out as much as I can, 200 words, one quote from the text, nothing found post.
Dean certainly spent an awful lot of time doing research. I really think he had a lot of really good points. I wish he would spend a little bit more time focusing on the discussion itself and maybe not being quite as wordy. Jean certainly is very creative in her responses. I might need to spend a little bit more time teaching her how to use the library, but I think her creativity and intuition is spot on. Blake certainly waited till the last minute. I wish he had spent a little bit more time planning and preparing. He would have had a better discussion.
Please respond to at least 2 peers by the end of the week. Go.
Well, I think I'll jump on this one right away. Oh wait, there's only one person who's posted yet. Oh well, here we go. And submit.
Well, Dean, I enjoyed reading your post. You found some interesting information. It seems accurate. I don't disagree with any of it.
Oh shoot, 11:55 on Monday. I gotta do those 2 replies. Okay, Dean, looks like you got a lot of posts. It must have been a good post. Well done, post. Jean, I liked your websites. I like surfing too.
How am I going to facilitate better discussion here? I didn't get any good dynamic discussion out of either of these people.
Dear instructor, I did not know what I was supposed to respond to. I wish I would have had a little more information on the kinds of things to address.
I'd like to introduce you to Paulo Freire. He was a Brazilian educator and revolutionary. He saw education as this powerful force to move people, and then it's people who move the world. And I think that we all see this when we spark our students, when we see that moment of brilliance. I can share that I've had a student in a sociology class. She was really interested in sharing leftover food from her restaurant with the homeless in her community. I talked to her about how food was dying on the vines in farms. She went to her local farms, found out that there were sweet potatoes dying on the vine, organized a group of people. They went and they picked those sweet potatoes and then they stored them in a local community center. The mayor was so excited that he actually turned that into a project that is sustainable 6 months later, and I hope that the program grows. That's just one example of how students take learning something and add it into their already full lives and help their communities. So how do we take the engaged discussion forum to harness the power of this conversation with our students, this dialogue? Today we're going to talk about 3 things: personalizing, activating, and valuing. We're going to personalize the student experience. We're going to engage them with real-world scenarios and career-relevant conversations. We're going to activate them by using provocative discussion prompts that activate vibrant discussion, challenge existing paradigms, and reinforce learning. We're going to show them their value and connect with each of them to show how they elevate the conversation in our online classrooms.
I'm going to talk about moving students from passive to active participation in discussion forums. Do you feel online discussions are used in a meaningful way? Discussion forums can sometimes feel limiting and restrictive, but they don't have to be that way. Discussions are an opportunity for students to connect in a peer-to-peer environment. You can't make them engage with their network of peers, but you can inspire, ignite a passion for learning, and provoke them into voicing their opinions. As instructors, the key is to identify students' challenges, move the conversation along, and invite them to participate. Let's explore the use of vibrant, facilitated discussions that personalize and activate learning while valuing diverse students. Acknowledge engagement challenges in discussion forums and offer to create methods to facilitate. Analyze the use of personalized interactions with students to meet them where they are and take them farther. Create opportunities to show students their value as a member of the classroom learning community, to promote peer learning moments. As educators, we want students who are involved in the classroom to engage in deeper learning. Prepare to guide students in a proactive and participatory learning experience that will benefit them throughout their academic journey and prepare them for the world. The learning outcomes for this session revolve around students and how they approach discussion forums in the classroom. Our learning outcomes are: acknowledge the engagement challenges in online discussion forums, discover discussion prompts that activate engagement, analyze the personalized interactions with students, create opportunities to show students their value as a member of the classroom learning community. We will touch on each of these points throughout the session.
Okay, now the learning outcome of acknowledging engagement challenges in the online discussion forums, there are 4 key points here I would like to cover. Number 1, students tend to wonder, and they've said this to me, what is the purpose for engaging in the discussion forums? They don't see it as core learning, and if it's not part of their core learning, like maybe quizzes and assessments are, they don't want to do it sometimes. Also, students are nervous, and that leads to inferiority, and if they begin to feel insecure and inferior, their confidence level will take a dive. Lack of time management, that is always a big one in my courses. Now, a lot of times, students just need a little bit of encouragement to help them understand that time management is needed. You can't just say you'll do all of this much work for school in a small period of time. They need time management to help them with that. Lastly, some students are just brand new in general to the online learning environment, and that in itself will bring a little bit of timidness or a nervousness to the online setting. So we need to help them with that, which leads to the question of how do we help our students overcome these online learning challenges so they can excel, for example, with their online discussion forums? Well, one way is to give them encouragement. You can do that by just being there for them and just giving them a little push, a little nudge, or a little bit of a challenge to increase their performance. For example, this summer I taught a course where I noticed one student in week 1 started out very well. In week 2, she kind of maybe wavered a little bit. And then I just thought, you know what? I think she's going to pick this up, because you can just tell when they start out strong. And guess what? She did. She really had an increase in her engagement, and her performance and her grades, reflected that. So I want to acknowledge that with her, and I emailed her and I shared with her how proud of her I was that she was able to get past a little wavering stage and to increase her performance. And I gave her tips on how to maintain that. Well, within a few minutes, she emailed me back, and what she said to me is this quote here in the slide. She said, "Thanks for acknowledging. I really was struggling a bit with my time management. I am hoping to be running at full potential going forward. My 1-year-old just started daycare, so I finally have time to get more things done. Thanks again." Now, maybe that's all it took to kind of give her the little nudge that she needed to keep her engagement up. We recognize what they're going through, with their schedule and raising kids who aren't maybe in daycare yet. But this helped her to keep going, forward with her learning. We can also tell our students that learning is like scaffolding and needing all pieces of a puzzle. For example, scaffolding, we know that means you continue to build upon pieces of information that you're learning. A puzzle you're creating. You don't just have the main core picture of the puzzle. You have to have all of the sides of the puzzle complete as well. Without those side pieces, or helpful pieces, do you have a completed puzzle? No, you can have an idea of what it is, but it is not a completed puzzle. So maybe we can help students adjust their mindset to see the discussion forums as essential and core learning by letting them know that each part of the online learning environment is needed to be successful with core learning. They need to continue to build upon each piece of information in their class, as well as get all of the supporting pieces, such as like in a puzzle, in order to have that full pleasure experience in terms of working with success in their online journey. It takes a change in mindset, and I believe they can do it. We just need to kind of help them along with that.
Hi, Nancy. I know that you also teach for Ashford University. How has your experience as an online student helped you as an online instructor?
Thanks, Jodie. Well, one way that I have been a successful student and that has helped me with my teaching is I'm living the examples that I share with my students. So everything I tell them I want them to do and what is expected of them, I do that also for my online schooling. And that's covered in one of my slides as well, where I have a color coding system. I share that with my students, and I use that for every one of my classes. And I've done that for my bachelor's and my master's with Ashford, and now with the PhD program. It's something that's been successful for me, so I keep using it. And especially when life gets crazy, like this summer was super crazy, what kept me going was just knowing I have a class that depends on me. I have to be an example for them, so that way I know I have to do my part as a student just as like I expect them to do their part as a student as well.
So Nancy, tell me how you encourage your students.
Well, one thing I like them to do is to make sure they're not just doing the bare minimum. So when it comes to discussion forums, I want them to add meat and depth and substance. And they know those are three words I use a lot in the classroom. Now, one way to add that meat to their discussion forums is I tell them to go back to the introduction in week 1, and that way they can just kind of reacclimate themselves with their classmates, and they can maybe pull something out of there, or maybe there's a connection in the intro that they, you know, maybe just forgot, and that way they can just say, oh, I can relate to student A now, I think I'll reply to her. And that just kind of helps to build that rapport in the classroom as well, and that camaraderie, which is needed in an online environment. So going back to the introductions is one. Also, I encourage them all of the time to grab data from the course textbook. A lot of posts I see do not have any substance or anything mentioned from the course textbook. So I always say to them, pull something from the textbook that's related to that particular week's learning, and then ask them a question or two, a minimum of one question related to that data, because if they're asking that question to their peer, they're going to kind of cause them to engage in critical thinking. And that's one of the goals of the discussion forums, is to engage in critical thinking. And if they can pull data from the book and then encourage them to answer a question, that's good engagement, and that's what I want them to do. I always tell them it's not enough to say you agree or you disagree, but state why you agree or disagree, and then also add information to support your statement. So having support and backing up your words is very important to me as an instructor and also as a student. And I also ask them to share a personal example that maybe it's related somehow to that discussion's topic. And then you never know how a student is going to relate to that as well. And again, that's just another way to build that camaraderie in the online learning environment, is to share an example and see how you can, or they can relate to each other. And something I found online, it's a YouTube video from Lindsay Rothschild, and she gives tips for students to engage in online discussion forums. And one of the things she said really jumped out to me, because this is on the forefront of my mind. It's making sure students back up their words with supportive statements. And My students know I stress that almost every week. And I stress it almost every week because they need it. If it was a one-time reminder, that would be great, but I can tell they need it more than once. And I always stress that. And I tie that into the grading rubric as well. And I tell them, if you're not backing up your main statements with supportive work, how can you reach the distinguished or the proficient level in the grading rubric, which those are the two highest rankings. So I give that to them in the weekly announcements as a reminder, and hopefully as a little bit of encouragement for them to say, if I want to do better in the grading rubric, I got to pick it up and make sure I add the depth, the substance, and the meat that I need. And that one way to do that is by supporting your statements.
Thank you.
So Nancy, if you were to give students, I love that you very quickly have come up with some simple kind of go-to phrases and some additional background to help the students really understand what's needed there. If you only had the ability to give students 3 takeaways from how to best engage in the online discussion forum, what would those top 3 things be? And, you know, please feel free to prioritize, some of the items that you just gave. But if you could only do 3, what would that be?
Wow. Okay. I would say first and foremost, they have to change their mindset. If they have a fixed, stagnant mindset, they are not going to grow. They are not going to see the need as to why they have to engage in discussion forums or why they have to follow directions. A lot of them, this is new to them. So if they can come into a new class and say, you know what, I've thought this way for a while, but now I am going to just be open to other learning opportunities in this online course. I'm going to put my best foot forward. That is what a growth mindset is all about, is understanding they can change. Number 2 would be reflection. I am huge on reflection as a student myself right now, so I always stress that with my students as well. And once you can engage in reflection from the previous week, then maybe you can see where you need to improve for the following week and then for the rest of the course. So if they're open to making that change for what they notice in reflection, that ties into number 1, that they can change their mindset. And number 3, they have to put forth the effort. They cannot just blink their eyes and expect to get the good grades. If you want to be successful in your online journey, you have to be proactive, intentional, and be participatory in your learning. It just can't happen in the blink of an eye. So I encourage them to do that by being disciplined and diligent. And I'm starting to stress grit. And if they can show that grit, I think they'll be successful. But again, it's getting them out of their comfort zone and into a new setting, changing their mindset, engaging in reflection, and have them believe in themselves that I can do this, but I have to be determined to do this. So once they can see that change, I think they'll be successful.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy.
Another way to help them out with that is helping them to have a draft schedule. A lot of times they may just think, I will get it done later in the week. Well, when life happens and we're throwing curveballs in life, what is going to fall by the wayside? Typically, it can be the work that's due, and there's a deduction, grading maybe, and it's just not a good start for them. And I cringe when I see students or when they tell me that they didn't start their homework that is due on Monday until that Sunday night or even Monday. We really need to help them. And here's one example. With this draft schedule here, day 1, Tuesday, they can start their reading, followed by, maybe start to have a little bit of an outline for the rest of their week. Day 2, finish the reading and start making more notes for other tasks that are due. They can chop off a little bit of the weekly goal one day at a time, and that will help them to spread it out so it's not all condensed at the end of the week. And here on day 7, For example, they can put the final touches on whatever work is due that day, such as their waypoint work and maybe even a quiz or an assessment. This will prevent the students from waiting until the last minute to get everything done. Again, they're wearing many hats in life. They may have a curveball thrown at them. How do we avoid unnecessary stress? Well, have a draft schedule where you can break up information each day of the week. One of the biggest benefits that I can see of a draft schedule is to avoid being overwhelmed and to avoid unnecessary stress in your life. Why have stress in your life at the end of the week when you can spread out your schoolwork throughout several days of the week and become more balanced? Now, for this slide here, this is very helpful information that I just love, and it really makes me excited because I follow this model here for me right now as a PhD student. What you see here is a sample of work from EXP 105 week 4. I went into Canvas and I copied and pasted the information, and I color coded the 3 bullet points. That means there's 3 different pieces of information to write about. Color coding it's a good visual for you. Now, after I color coded the 3 bullet points, I bolded keywords and I kind of grouped those words together because that tells me, oh, there's 2 groups of bolded words for first bullet point, which is yellow. I know I have to write about this group of bolded words, and then I have to write about this group of bolded words. For example, for identifying the level of use for each learning pattern, I wrote here as a sample for you, Buffy's level of use for S or sequence is used first. I identified the learning pattern, sequence, and the level of use is used first. For the second set of bolded words, it's guessing the level or saying if I gave them the LCI. I wrote here as a sample for you, rather than guessing, Buffy actually took the LCI test. You keep going through the bare bones for each of the bullet points, and then once you write about all the key pieces of information for each bullet point, you can go back or do 1 bullet point at a time and add in supportive statements and just really try to add more meat and depth and substance by backing up the main statements with additional words that can support what you're writing about. And then once you have everything completed that you're supposed to write about, take out and delete the colored bullet points, and what do you have left? You should have left a healthy and robust, meaty couple paragraphs for your discussion posting. So once we do this, hey, our students are off to a great start. The next, or the last thing that I do right here is, you see the words in red? It says a minimum of 250 words. Anything that is in red, that is an alert for me. It's a message and an FYI for me to complete before I submit my work. For example, to make sure I get 250 words, all you have to do is go to the bottom left-hand side of your screen in Word, and that'll give you your little word count there. If you're not making it, well then add more meat and substance to your writing. Now, to wrap this up, for the learning outcome of acknowledging engagement challenges in online discussion forums, we need to listen to our students. That's how we can do this. We need to listen and then take action and meet them at their level. And I say that because students learn at different levels at all times, so we need to give individualized guidance, tips, suggestions for our students. We listen to them and then we act. And that way they're not left hanging, because if they're left hanging, that could make or break them. And then also for the personalized interactions with students to engage them in the online discussion forums, how can we do that? Well, for starters, we can help them see that there is a purpose for engagement and that everything is part of the core learning. We can help them with their confidence level so it can increase. We can help them with their time management to create a schedule or how to break down their work. And then also, you just have to be patient with them and help them to see it's okay to take on a new challenge. It's okay to realize, oh, I might be struggling here. So we have to help them see that even though they may be struggling, they can still be successful in their online journey. And that is by, we can engage them and we can help them and guide them along the way. Thank you.
As instructors, you are the discussion facilitator in the classroom. Knowing how to use discussion prompts that activate engagement is part experience and part knowing your students. Discussions are often tied to learning outcomes or a main theme or topic relevant to what students will learn in the course. Even if your discussions are already written, you have the power to take them farther and enhance critical thinking by moving the conversation forward with a few techniques. Use debatable topics, scenarios, or case studies in your discussions. Encourage students to take contrasting views on a subject, especially if a right answer is not clear. Ask additional why, how, or what prompts to facilitate conversation. Use your imagination and creativity to get students to go beyond what they've learned so far. This discussion prompt is imaginative, tied to learning objectives, and uses provocative language. It's engaging. Is race a beneficial tool of identity when it comes to democracy? There's no right or wrong answer. Students have a lot to talk about here. This question prompts one to think about how race may or may not be beneficial in democratic society. It goes beyond simply asking what is race to getting one to think about the utility of racial identity in democratic societies. What if you have a discussion question like this one? Describe the role of race in democracy. Is this engaging? Not really. It's vague, very broad, and it needs to be narrowed down and focused on something relatable. Do you think students are going to know how to answer this question? They might, or they might not know where to start. That's where you become a discussion facilitator. With a vague discussion like this one, get them to narrow the focus with a few suggestions. Add some what, how, and why prompts. Revert to the weekly learning outcomes that align to this discussion. Is there a significant point that hasn't been mentioned that you can ask that will facilitate conversation in the right direction? Ask students to share a real-world example or case study that illustrates a turbulent time related to race and democracy. How does race play a role in the way you or others view democracy? What notable events in our nation's history have shaped our democracy? How did race play a role? Use your imagination and creativity to get students to think and engage. As a facilitator, do you think adding a current and powerful image to this discussion makes it more engaging? Almost everyone is familiar with the Black Lives Matter movement. This is a provocative image. It's all over social media and everyone has an opinion about what it represents. That's very personal. It's likely to engage students and get them talking. Don't be afraid of having a conversation around impactful subjects. Students are more likely to remember it and learn about different viewpoints from their peers this way. As an educator, I want to help students become lifelong learners by making them curious about the world. They need to think critically and ask hard questions and know how to find answers on their own. Here are a few ideas to enhance discussions from Sarita McCoy-Gregory in her article, It's All in the Questions. She says, writing critical questions for classroom discussion is a useful skill to develop, whether for a graded assignment or for more active engagement in the classroom. We should encourage students to be actively involved in their learning. She recommends students prepare their own questions in advance and submit them for discussion. Such questions could include those like, probe the underlying assumptions that an author uses to make his or her argument. Illuminate the strengths, weaknesses, and contradictions of an author's argument. Invite students to think about the implications of an argument for themselves, other people, social systems, or society at large. Invite students to assess how their readings influence their sense of where they stand on issues and their role as participants. It's important to remember that you have a role in guiding students to become critical thinkers. Encourage students to go beyond what they already know and ask the hard questions by providing provocative discussion prompts and help them to become lifelong learners.
Thank you, Jana and Nancy. I'm really excited to continue this conversation talking about how can we show students that they're valuable members of our learning community. I think it's really important that we always start with positive intent. Let's just assume that the behavior we see isn't representative of how their heart is into their learning, what they're trying to get out of the experience. But rather, let's show compassion and let's think about how students are doing the best that they can given their current circumstances. Let's meet students where they are. I recently had a student in a doctoral education course. He works as an electrician. He doesn't have an opportunity to volunteer in a school and talk about his experience in schools, but rather he spent 20 years building up his electrician business. He'd like to get into education, and he's starting with education. Rather than penalize him for not having access to or an opportunity to pull from his experience in education, I have him share teachable moments that he has with his electricians, with his staff, and with his community, his clients. It's very similar than what happens in the education situations. That's an opportunity for us to meet students where they're at. Let's avoid assumptions. When a student doesn't show up to class or they're late, don't take it personally. Don't assume that they're not engaged. Don't assume that they don't care. Rather, assume positive intent. Suspend your assumptions and be open to the possibility that something truly came up and they're doing the best that they can. One of the biggest things that's difficult for faculty is to assume that low participation means a lack of interest. I challenge that. Senge said, when we're learning something new, we can feel awkward, incompetent, and even foolish. It's easy to convince ourselves that it's really not so important after all to incorporate the new, so we give up. That's our own psychological immune system protecting ourselves. It's our way to say, it's okay, just step back. So as teachers, it's our job to help students break through those defenses, and come out of their shell and understand that they're full members of the community. I mentioned suspending assumptions. That's really important for all of us to be able to be open to the process of learning. Please take a moment to watch what Dr. Bohm has to say on the idea of understanding thought and suspending assumptions.
We see reality according to our thought, and therefore thought is constantly participating both in giving shape and form and figuration to ourselves and to the whole of reality, right? Now, but thought doesn't know this. Thought is thinking that it isn't doing anything. I think this is really where the difficulty is, that we have got to see that thought is part of this reality. So the first thing we have to do in the long run is to look at our whole way of thinking, which has developed over so many thousands of years. I don't think it was the original way of thinking of the human race at all, but for many complex reasons it came about. Now, that means that people have to make they have to participate, to make a cooperative effort, to have a dialogue, a real dialogue in which we will not merely exchange opinions, but actually listen deeply to the views of other people without resistance. And we cannot do this if we hold to our own opinion and resist the other. It doesn't mean we should accept the other, but we have to be able to look at all the opinions as suspended, as it were, in front of us, without carrying them out, without suppressing them.
So how do we harness the power of dialogue? We begin by suspending assumptions. How do we come together and meet one another with compassion, with positive intent? I can tell you when you're able to do it, you can improve the quality of a conversation. you can take it to the next level. The goal of dialogue is to create shared meaning. So when you harness the power of dialogue, you're actually able to come together and create something new. Again, the purpose of shared meaning through dialogue is that we have an opportunity to liberate ourselves from our assumptions, from all of the gray that clouds us from being able to actually see one another, to be able to hear one another. I think we see enough of this in our daily lives today. The work of Bunkers, I would like to share this quote. Dialogue is a process of liberating discovery, occurs multidimensionally, bringing new understanding of persons, places, events, and community. It is the invention of new thought. Originating new thought is the core of dialogic encounter. When all involved are focused on communicating coherently in truth, the formation of new thought and action holds the potential of seeing the familiar in a new way. Imagine that happening in your online discussion forums. That would be absolutely amazing. It's already happening today. We just have to look for it. So what are the rules of engagement in this new paradigm of dialogue? According to POWE, when he brought people together, what he found is that you have to actively engage thinking. We need active participation. We need to suspend that presumptive thought and build trust with one another. We need to listen openly, and then, only then, can we work toward creating shared meaning. As faculty, it's important for us to create this safe environment where this can happen. And I share these rules with my students, help them understand that this is a place where we're all coming together and we're going to value one another. So as an instructor, how can you make sure that you create this safe, bias-free, harmonious environment? You have a lot of students in the class, and they're having good days and bad days and off days. They've got busy lives. They've got a lot going on. So how do we create a space where they can come together with us and they know that this is an opportunity for them to be open to learning something new? This is an oasis away from their everyday lives. We're going to challenge them. We have to challenge them. That's how learning occurs. But how can we make sure that we all come together and we feel like we're in this together? I think you're already doing it. I see it in classes all the time. The students are eager to be heard. They're eager to be valued. They're eager to be challenged. So collaboration is key. I think it's really important. I listened to a conversation from TLC earlier this year where there was a great discussion about the use of doctor. I personally prefer that my students call me Jodie. I like the idea of leveling the power playing field so that we can all come together as equal collaborators in this learning environment. Many students are not comfortable with that. Many faculty are not comfortable with that. And I think it's really important to do whatever you're most comfortable with. You worked hard for that degree. I absolutely understand wanting to be doctor. I get that. And that's something that you can communicate to your students of how you prefer to be called. As I said, I like to just be Jodie. I have yet to find a student who'll call me Jodie in the classroom. They might call me Jodie in a message, in an email when they reply to me, but most often they may be uncomfortable with that. So again, it's coming together, creating the rules together. Effective questioning is really important in those discussion forums. When a student posts, they're often doing the best they can to meet the prompt, and they're bringing, hopefully, their authentic selves to that space. Read it through that lens of suspended assumptions, assuming positive intent. Think about how you can ask some insightful questions to get just a little bit more out of the student. Maybe they've gone off track a little bit. How can you redirect them without embarrassing them? How can we be transparent? If they bring something up and they ask you a question, we can't know everything. It's absolutely impossible to know everything. And so instead, find a way to be transparent that you may not know, but how can we together go find an answer to this? What can we do? What does the research say? Let the research help move through those spaces where we're not experts. Training is an important foundational need for faculty. And I'm so excited that University of the Rockies is merging with University of Ashford, and so the faculty of University of the Rockies are going to have access to the incredible CETL team, who puts on incredible presentations. I'm getting ready for some that are going to be occurring this week, and then of course I'm participating here in TLC. So that entire team under the direction of Morgan Johnson just does an incredible job in supporting the faculty. All right. You've heard from an instructional designer, Jana Cole, and what she sees as ways to personalize, activate, and value students. You've heard from Nancy Garza, who is an active instructor for Ashford University, and she's also a student in her doctoral program. I hope that you have learned something from us today, and you can turn around and personalize, activate, and value your students today. Thank you so much for joining us.